I know my college decision. No.
All right, so Dylan, so what's going on? I'm just happy to talk to you,
Ah,
and it's been maybe 7 months, I think, since our
yeah,
last time we
lesson.
talked. Yeah, since
Yeah,
our last lesson,
yeah.
and yeah, you are over the fall. I think you recorded a record,
Yes, we did.
and so I want to get into all of it. I want to talk about
Okay.
jam poetry. I would love to talk about like the work you did with your first band,
hmm
Chronic Delta, and kind
hmm
of like because I think that that coincides with like a lot of your development as a drummer and a
Yeah,
musician. And so, I want to kind of cover like what it's like to learn this cool instrument of
yeah.
drums, and also like because you're now the front man and guitar player, one of two guitar players in jam poetry. So I like how that because I feel like there's probably a connection there to like learning the drums and how
hmm
you eventually went on to play other instruments. And so yeah, I would love to just cover kind of your whole journey thus far as a musician.
hmm
So let's start wherever you want, man. Where do you,
Ah.
because we can go backwards, we can start in the middle and work our way out. But
Um,
um, yeah, man.
yeah, no, sorry.
No,
Um,
let's. How about
uh,
this? How about this? I think you were 13 when we first
yeah,
started working together,
yeah,
and I remember in those early lessons, I think you had a family member who played drums,
yeah.
or
My cousin Rocco.
yeah, and I remember like that was like at the beginning. I don't think you had a kit, right? So like you
No.
were so and you were playing on his kit even in the early stages, right? Like
Like,
occasionally that would be your.
yeah, like here and there, because he lives kind of far away from me, but every time I was over, he'd let me like sit
Yeah,
down and play.
it's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. And so is that was that your introduction to kind of
pretty
playing the
much.
drums
Yeah.
through him?
Yeah, because I'd always go over there because they're out on the other end of Long Island. And I'd always go over there for like, like the holidays, like Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve. And I'd always see him with the kit, because he always had it in his basement and he'd always like play occasionally or my uncle would come down and just like play a little bit. He didn't really know how to play, but to me, it was cool. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I got really interested in drums since then, and it was kind of always
Awesome.
in the back of my mind for a
Oh,
very
that's
long
awesome.
time.
That's awesome. So how long when you started to like when we started to take lessons?
Mhm.
Well, actually before that, were you kind of trying to learn on your own? Did you have a period of time where you were doing like the YouTube thing, or was it really like, hey, dad, I want to learn the drums, I want to take lessons, and then your dad brought you to me? Like how did it start?
Okay. It's kind of funny. So I always thought about it and I always thought, hey, this is cool, but I never thought to like look to learn. But then one day, um I forget how old I was, but I think it might have been like I either just turned 13 or I was like about to turn 13. But I was in middle school and we had this play and it was like a musical play and they needed a band and it was mainly teachers, but no one in the entire school knew how to play drums. And I was like, this is it. This is my like excuse, so to say, to finally like really get into it. So then I kind of ran with it. And then ever since
Awesome.
then, it's just been, you
Awesome.
know,
That's
there for me.
awesome. And in those like early days, I guess when we were doing less, even like definitely when we were doing lessons
Yeah.
at the store, the music shop,
hmm
um, did you have a kit, or like how'd
I
you
did,
start practicing?
I didn't have a kit for a while, because I believe we started in like late August,
Okay.
of
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
that year. And I believe, I got a kit, like I got like an Alesis electric kit for my for
Nice.
like as like a Christmas gift for my
Awesome.
parents. And so that's when I got my kit, but in between then I had the practice pad because I remember you recommended that I get one. So I think after that first lesson I went and bought one with my dad.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so I mainly used the practice pad and then like some pillows if I wanted to have like other things to focus on.
Okay.
I just used like pillows, the practice pad, and I just kind of like tap my foot on the floor.
All right. Okay. This is great. So yeah, that's so cool that that's what you did. And I'm remembering this now too. It's been a long time because what
Yeah,
you're 20, how old are you now? 20,
I just
20,
turned 21.
21. Well, congratulations. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you. Thank you.
Um, yeah, so obviously this is a long time ago now. So
Yeah.
it's like slowly coming back. But
Yeah.
but I think that's a really, really cool thing. There's like you know, I feel like drummers who do exactly that, like who aren't
Mhm.
afraid to kind of start on the pad, but then also get
Mhm.
creative. Like we can't all have a kit right away, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool to hear you say that I just kind of made my own drum set with like pillows or whatever,
Mhm.
tapping your foot on the floor. Like that's awesome. So
Yeah.
and so if you got the, I definitely think we started in August, September-ish. So that's a couple of months of doing lessons
Mhm.
without the drum kit.
Yeah.
But you were growing on the instrument. Like it wasn't, did you feel like did you even notice like because obviously you hadn't had a kit before, so you didn't know what it was like to practice on one. Did
Mhm.
you like do you remember feeling like I don't feel like I'm really advancing because I don't have a kit? Or did you feel like, hey man, like I love this, I'm learning,
Mhm.
like let's go. Like what was that? If I know it's a while ago, so
Yeah.
what do you remember about that time?
No, I do. It's kind of a mix of both, in a way. Because like since I was mainly like on a pad, I was learning a lot of or not learning, but focusing mainly on like the rudiment stuff that we were working on back
Mhm.
then. So like that I was like, okay, I'm getting this down. It's not as difficult. Like I remember paradiddles were really hard for me for a while.
Yeah.
Um and then after like maybe like a month, it started to get easier and I could do them a bit faster. But then if I had to apply it to a kit, I kind of felt like a bit nervous and I was like, oh no, I'm forgetting everything I know. So it's kind of like a mix of both in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome though. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's healthy, right? It's like
Mhm.
you're learning on the you're learning in the lessons, you're learning like on your pad and on your kind of like makeshift drum kit.
Yeah.
Um, but there is still that desire for like, man, I really need a kit,
Mhm.
like a real kit, so I can really grow because it feels awkward. Maybe certain things might feel awkward in the lesson, or if you go to your cousin's house and you play on his kit, it's like, oh man, that thing I was working on, how do I apply it to this? So
Yeah.
there's that cool, I think, give and take, of the process. But when you finally get that kit, uh, what was that like? And how did that, like, what was then the drum journey? Like, as a drum, someone learning the
Mhm.
instrument, a student, like having that kit, and then the years that move forward, like, what was the process? Like, what was your journey beyond that?
Yeah. I remember I got my first kit, which was like I mentioned before, the an Alesis electric kit.
Mhm.
And I remember setting it up in my room because I was like home alone that day and I didn't want to like because like I think my dad told me like, hey, if you wait, we can put it together, like put it together. And I was like, okay, I'll wait. And then I remember just getting impatient and I just opened up the
Yeah.
box and I tried to put it together and things were like kind of lopsided and like the beams weren't like in proper place. But I got it to like together where it was working and it was comfortable and I didn't
Sweet.
mind and it was like that like forever.
It
So
stayed like
it
that.
stayed like that. Like I was like, "Hey, Dad, can you help me fix it?" He looked at it. He was like, "Okay, I'll fix it." And then I think he forgot, and then I didn't really care. So it's just stayed like that.
That's awesome.
But Yeah, I remember because we live in an apartment, so I couldn't get like normal acoustic drums because it'd just be too loud. Um,
Yeah.
so I had to get the electric ones, but honestly, I didn't mind that since I could like mess with the volume a little bit so it wasn't too loud or too soft. I could really like focus on what I was doing. And actually, these headphones are the same headphones I had from
Wow.
all the way back when. They're still working.
That's awesome.
But I would just practice the stuff that we would go over, um, like day in, day out, whenever I had free time,
Hmm.
for a long time. And then after that, when I started getting a bit more comfortable and I wanted to like branch out a little bit, I started playing along to some of my favorite songs at the time. So like my cousin Rocco, who got me into the drums, he actually got me into Blink-182. So I got into like a lot of their early records like Cheshire Cat and Buddha.
Mm,
And then I later then found like the Travis stuff, which
unbelievable.
I then
Yeah.
took to
Hmm.
and just kind of ran with it ever since. So I just that's how I like for a few years, maybe like the first two or three after I got the kit, that's like what I would do is just work on what we did and then work on some like just random songs that I might have been listening to that day and just see if I could like play along with it and then eventually see if I could like do what the parts were in the songs, if granted that I could.
Yes. That, I mean, man, I feel like there's so many young drummers that would benefit from hearing what you
Mhm.
just said. Because I think that a lot of times people, we go to learn the instrument, especially like in like our culture right now with like
Mhm.
schooling the way it is and stuff,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, you got to do it by the book, and I can only learn you know, based off of what the textbook says or whatever
Yeah.
the curriculum is. And yeah, I mean, I taught out of books in our lessons and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And there is absolutely like, right, like it absolutely helps, right? We can learn so much through the books. But man, if you're not playing the records, like, what
Yeah.
are we? There's like, there's a massive thing missing
Yeah.
in our development, right? So like, and you just doing that on your own, that's
Mhm.
not having to hear me say like, have you played along to any records? It's like you just were like, it sounded like you were just like, you love the instrument, you love music. Most importantly,
Mhm.
you love music. So it's
Yeah.
like, I want to try to jam to this thing.
Mhm.
And specifically, I love what you said about, at first it was just, can I play along?
Mhm.
Can I keep, in a way, it's like, can I just keep up with the band?
Yeah.
Right. And then you grow, and then it becomes like, what is Travis doing in that particular
Mhm.
section? Or what's that fill? Or what's that groove? Right. And then you try to learn it. And what was that feeling like? Like as you make the switch from, okay, I'm playing, I'm keeping up with the record, but like to, I'm really trying to dissect it. What was your process like? And I'm sure
Mhm.
to this day when you go to, learn a song by ear, what's your
Mhm.
process like there?
Um, I remember the first time I really did that. It was a Blink song. It was called Ghost on Dance Floor off their record Neighborhoods. And
So
I was
good.
trying to get the whole thing, but so I remember like breaking each section down. So it's like, okay, I'll tackle the end like at another point because it was just kind of crazy. So I would just focus on like the verses and the chorus. I forget if it was the verses, but I know his right hand on the hi-hat, it's like I think it's doing 16ths, but I could be wrong.
Mhm.
But I remember it was like super intense for me at the time. Like it was just so fast. So I would just practice like just my right hand just like this
Yeah.
for a while, and then I would try to implement the other parts of the kit. And then eventually, like I would just move on to like different parts of like, okay, now I'm into the chorus and I would like get that down. And then when I got to the ending and it was like there's a lot of moving parts, I would try and like just go at like maybe like 10 seconds at a time and just kind of learn each bit. And then at the end of it all, once I was like done and I had played through it a bunch of times and I finally got it. It was just like super cool. And I was like, oh
Ah,
wow. Because like when I
that's
first
awesome.
heard it, I was like, there's no way I can do this. And then I was just like, why not? And at the
Yeah.
end of it, it ended up working out. And I was
Yeah.
just like through the moon with like happiness.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, that's what it's
Yeah.
about, man. And it's
Yeah.
like, taking that risk, right? And just saying like, well,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna try. Like, what do we have to lose, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm kind of focusing on this point for a second because
Mhm.
I feel like there's a lot of like young drummers out there who like are learning the instrument and
Yeah.
they're they don't do this kind of thing, or they're hesitant because they don't think they're ready to like try to play like this track that they really
Mhm.
like or whatever. There's also the drummers out there who are like just do not care and
Yeah.
they're just gonna go for it, and that's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like those are the drummers that really, a lot of them really go on to become great drummers because you're trying to play music right away, you know.
Mhm.
I feel like that was something we always talked about in our lessons, was like trying to grow as I don't know if technician is really the way we want to think of it, but like trying to grow as an individual drummer, but then
Mhm.
also like playing to as much music as possible, or like listening to records and being like the thing we're learning it maybe in the book, like what are some actual musical scenarios where that thing applies, right?
Mhm.
I remember over the years, like you were always a rock, like heavily
Yeah.
inspired by rock drumming, but we did
Mhm.
like I remember, you know, we spent so much time like checking out like 70s funk,
Yeah.
you know, fusion, right? I remember
Mhm.
doing like Blue Matter by
Yeah,
John
I was about to
Scofield with
mention Blue
you.
Matter. I still
Yeah,
listen to
yeah.
that to this day.
It's so good. Dennis
It's such a
Chambers
good
is
record.
unbelievable. Yeah. It's like so getting well versed, right? How did you feel like all those years of drumming and taking lessons? Did you feel like you there was a good benefit to exposing yourself to music, even if it's not music you were playing? Or did you kind of
Yeah.
feel like at times, like, I don't know, maybe if I never checked out that genre, it wouldn't have made a difference? Like, what are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that?
No, definitely. Because I remember when I first like came to you, and before we jumped into like other like musical styles of playing, I was very much into like classic rock and a little bit of punk rock and like
Mhm.
pop punk and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, this is cool, like everything that I was listening to back then. But then you introduced me to like jazz and funk and fusion and some Latin stuff too as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
just and by that point I was like super like into the instrument at that point. Like I was like super immersed in just everything that I was doing and picking up. And I it was kind of like a whole new world. Like every time we jumped into a new genre and you showed me new songs, I was just like blown away of like
Mhm.
stuff you can do. I remember I know we focused on like some rock songs, but I remember when we jumped into like the shuffle, for example, like I had never heard like of
Yeah,
the shuffle. Like I didn't really know
yeah,
that what that was. And then, we
right.
played through a number of different songs and like different styles of it. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then like the funk stuff where everything was like out of place in comparison to like where rock is super like linear and funk was just not. And I was
Yeah.
just like I that to this day was like funk is one of my favorite genres, period, because it's
Yes.
just so like cool and in terms of like what everyone's doing. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just it's just amazing how everything like mixes together and the way the drums are kind of like played.
That's awesome. That's so cool to hear you say that. And that actually, I think, kind of leads me to, I mean, we'll maybe jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
But it leads me into, I think, a cool thing to kind of what you're doing now.
Mhm.
Um, like, do you feel, I feel this way listening to Jam Poetry's debut EP,
Thank you.
but I'm just curious if you feel this way. Do you feel that listening to those funk guys like David Garibaldi or Mike Clark or something like that, do you feel that that influenced your playing, like even in the kind of like, you know, punk rock, up-tempo rock kind of vibe that you
Yeah.
guys do? I don't want to mischaracterize your band.
No,
It's so original. It's so
it's
original to
okay.
me. I love it so much, but it's like we could just call you a rock band, but I feel like you probably have a more descriptive
There, we tend to get classified as Midwest emo.
Midwest
Uh,
emo. Dude,
yeah,
man, I'm old. I don't even know what that is, but I
it's
loved
okay. It's yeah, that's typically what we get classified as is Midwest
Wow.
emo. Um,
Awesome.
but
So
mhm,
did listening to, you know, that 70s funk stuff and just funk in general and
mhm.
fusion even like we were just you mentioned Dennis Chambers earlier, like do you feel like that was a big thing into like the originality of jam poetry and how what you did on
Mhm.
that first record?
Absolutely. It may not be like very obvious to hear, like in the
Sure.
music that I would have like been listening to a lot of that stuff, but it definitely did help me because on that first record, it was just me and my buddy Christian at the time recording with our friend Alex. And so I did drums on the record as well as some guitar work and then the vocals.
Mhm.
But it definitely influenced a lot of my playing on certain songs, especially some of the ones where we kind of dabbled with like different time signatures because I couldn't just do like the normal like
Yeah.
hi-hat, snare, kick, groove that and the
Yes.
different variations of it. I had to kind of get a bit weird with it and having listened to a lot of and played a lot of like that funk and some fusion and jazz and Latin stuff at the time and before, it definitely kind of prepared me for that stuff and like a lot of like the footwork that I had to do on the record here and there throughout. Like a song like Blue Matter, that
Mhm.
I believe it's the chorus, the
Mhm.
one with the crazy kick pattern
Oh
that
yeah.
that
Yeah.
like that definitely prepared me for some of the stuff I had to do,
I
even
hear
into
that.
the new record that we just recorded. So
Ah, yes. We got to talk about that in a second, but
yeah.
um I definitely hear that Dennis
Mhm.
Chambers influence
Yeah.
in your drumming, and even some of like the you know, kind of like when we got into like linear funk,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, where like for those of you drummers who are listening that don't maybe you haven't gotten that far yet, it's the idea that we're not doing the hi-hat kick, hi-hat snare all the time, right? Like where
Mhm.
it's like this idea of playing a groove where, you know, maybe your kick is by itself on beat one and then the hi-hat's on the E of one and then there's a
Mhm.
ghost zone in the snare, right? Everything is kind of its own thing.
Yeah.
So I even feel like that study that you did for
Mhm.
such a long time, um, I even hear that in what you've done with jam poetry is
Yeah.
like it's in like some of your fills like
Mhm.
I think it's throw ball catch that tune
Yeah.
like your drumming in that is like really there's so much happening your use of the full kit there's actually
Yeah.
linear stuff happening in that song
Yeah.
whether it was intentional or not I feel like
Mhm.
that's the idea. It's probably not intentional because it just felt right as a composer yourself,
Yeah.
right? So like it just came out. But for us to get there, right, as a drummer, like we need to expose ourselves to those other things.
Mhm.
And maybe this is a cool connection to what we were talking about learning a few minutes ago. But
Mhm.
like, yes, we can, and tell me what you think about this, but I feel like yes, we could maybe learn something like linear drumming through a book,
Yeah.
and maybe we can learn it well, right?
Mhm.
And we should probably learn it that way, right?
Yeah.
But if we don't have those records to reference,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's probably hard to then be in a band like you are and bring that thing from the book into the band where it sounds musical, right?
Mhm.
Like being able to say even subconsciously like, oh yeah, I heard Garibaldi do that with Tower of Power, or I heard like Mike Clark play with Herbie Hancock,
Mhm.
you know, on like uh actual proof, you know, from that record Thrust. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that one, but you know, like you know, or obviously like we've been talking about Blue Matter
Yeah.
with Dennis Chambers playing, like having that knowledge, right? Like I feel like it's important.
Yeah.
And did you feel like that was a big there was a connection there to like when we were studying together, like
Mhm.
doing the book thing, learning something like that, but then referencing the actual musical song or full album, like was that helpful as a drum student?
Yes, absolutely. Because sometimes when I would learn it from the book and I didn't yet have the the song to listen to
Yeah.
of someone applying it to like a scenario,
Mhm.
um, or like in a song, I should say. I would understand it from like the book standpoint, and I would know how to play it for like pretty well. So like if I was like focusing on like the measures that I was like playing from the book, or like if I needed to just come up with something like kind of off the top of my head for what I was doing, it came to me pretty easy. But when I had to actually apply it to a band setting, that's when I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. How do I do
Yeah.
this? But then having songs to listen to that had that as either a minor or a major part of the song, it then helped me to understand, okay, I can use it across the whole song, or I can use it in fills, or just like verses, choruses, bridges, like wherever. That kind of helped me learn how to apply what I had learned
Yeah.
and pretty like good and creative ways.
That makes so much sense to me. That's awesome. Um, okay, so I want to talk about your time with Chronic Delta. I want to
Mhm.
talk about your current time with Jam Poetry.
Mhm.
But I want to talk about uh, just like maybe one more thing about just studying drums and like,
Yeah.
learning the instrument. So, you took private lessons for a super long time.
Yeah.
You also played in, I think, did you play in like jazz band in school or like
I
a
did.
band in school? You did, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were learning there as well, right? So jazz band for how many years was that? Would you say?
Every year of high school, so for 4 years.
4 years. Okay. Amazing. Um, and and then like I guess my question would be, or can you talk a little bit about like what was in the heart of studying drums? What was like a day in the life of your practice routine, a
Mhm.
week in the life of your practice routine, and then maybe a month, and then like a full year, if you ever thought of it that way. Like,
Yeah.
how did you approach daily practice and like goals on the instrument?
hmm I For a while, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really think about it.
Hmm. That's
Because
fine. Yeah.
I didn't really like know like how to really plan things out. I was really bad at that I'm still not great at it. But like I'm being like just to be honest, I'm really still not great at it.
No, this is good.
Um,
I just let's pause there for 1 second.
yeah.
This is great. That's like that. I'm glad I want you to be honest,
Yeah.
and because like I mean you've definitely heard me say this back in the day,
Mhm.
but like everybody learns differently.
Yeah.
So like there are students out there and or people who are interested in learning that might hear this and like totally they will totally relate to that same feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, do not make up some like, oh, well, I did this, that, and the third. Like
Yeah.
I want to know like what was it like? And because obviously you had a passion for the instrument.
Yeah.
So even if there wasn't goals, like even if you didn't like kind of plot it out, like, you know, did you practice? I imagine you practiced often, but like because you're a killer drummer. But like,
Thank you.
yeah, just like the drive, what was it like for you, learning the
Yeah.
instrument?
So for a while, it like especially like within the first like year or two, I'd say it it was all very like new and in at some points overwhelming, but not in a bad way.
Mhm.
Because they're just like, okay, there's a lot like on my plate in terms of like how there is. It's not like just kick, snare, hi-hat. There's like so much more in
Yeah.
terms of what I'm able to do and what I can learn going forward. And so for a while, it was just like just trying to tackle the things that we had learned and then like the songs, like practicing like some songs. So when I first started practicing songs, it was just like ones that at first it was just like, oh, I can do anything, haha. And then I realized very quickly that's not the case.
Mhm.
Um, So I would jump into like easier songs. Like I remember I believe we practiced Back in Black by AC/DC. I
Definitely.
think that was like
Yeah.
the first one or one of them. But I would like practice like a lot of like early classic rock songs that were maybe not as difficult. Or like in my jazz band in high school, we would play a lot of like covers for the school. So what I would do is a lot of the rock tunes that we would learn and like play. I'd never had to play them like the record. It was
Cool.
just like, okay, let's just play it and make it
Hmm.
coherent. Um,
Hmm.
but I would go home and if I remembered the song, which I then wrote down, um,
Yeah.
the names of the songs, I would try and like analyze the songs and like that's how I would like learn new ones that I
Awesome.
may not have been biased towards or had learned already.
Yeah.
But then as time went on and I started to understand and get better at the instrument, I also was like, okay, here's how I can like plan things out. And I believe we talked about it as well multiple times where it's like, okay, like I'll do like 15 minutes of like just noodling around just to kind of like warm up and then I'll jump in or like rudiments to warm up or like every day it might be different and
Mhm.
then like I'll focus on like what we learned and then maybe I'll do like some like I don't know like some of the song work or this different style work and then jump into like just like a song that I picked and like practice that for like maybe 30 minutes and then jump back into the stuff that we would do and I would do that for maybe like an hour and a half a day um and then later on, when I had like more free time, on like weekends and whatnot, I would maybe do jump into like 2 or 3 hours. I would just kind of like the time would just fly by, and I would
Yeah.
just kind of like really get into it. So yeah, in terms of planning, at the beginning, I was not good at it, and I didn't think about it. But then I started to get a bit better in at my organizational skills, and some days I would forget to practice, or I would just be a bit tired, and I would just be
Hmm.
like, not today,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's
Um,
important, I think.
yeah, and some days I would just kind of just forget. Um, and like, that happens. So,
Sure. Yeah.
but it wasn't like too detrimental. Like, and if I gone too many days without practicing, I'd be like, oh, okay, I gotta practice.
Yeah.
It's been too many days, and I could notice it because like if it might have been like a week since I had practice, and I'll jump into like what we're doing, or like maybe I'm at school and I had to do like something for jazz rock, and I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. Then I would realize, oh, it's because I didn't practice.
Right. Right. So you're a little rusty at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
that would happen. So
yeah, no, it's like, um, but all of that is, that's a part of life. You know what I
yeah,
mean? There's like, there are weeks where we can't practice, months even sometimes where don't get to practice as much as we want, you know?
yeah,
Um, I know we used to talk a lot about like, are you thinking about drums? Because I think a lot of
hmm
times if we keep the drums in the front of our mind, even if we don't have access to the kit,
hmm
you still kind of stay relatively sharp, you know? But
yeah,
like when we just totally like forget about it, that's where I think when the rust can come in. Um, I think what's really cool though is the fact that you were taking lessons, you were practicing a bunch, you know, you were in jazz band when you got to high school, and then you were in an original rock band.
yeah,
So you had so many different areas of your life devoted to playing the drums.
yeah,
So even if like your personal practice time on a particular week, maybe you didn't get to do as much, like you had jazz band in school,
mhm,
like you were still playing the drums, right? So it's like, or you had rehearsals with your band, like you were always around the
yeah.
instrument, and I mean, that's gotta be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine that was a big part of your development was like you were just
Uh,
immersed in the instrument.
I can agree.
Yeah.
Um, because it's kind of weird because before like I started getting into music and all that, like I would like listen to it here and there, but I would play a lot of sports and like that was kind of
Yeah.
it. And then when I got into like music, I still like had some sports here and there. Like I played hockey for like maybe like 2 years into what we were doing. But
Mhm.
I switching it from like sports to music it was kind of like I didn't realize it, but it was like a pretty big change up for me because I was like
Mm,
so used to this one thing for so many years, and then I jumped into to music, and so by the time I got like into high school and like really deep into high school, I completely forgot like, oh wow, like everything has completely changed, and it's really cool, and it's like now there's like so much music, whereas before it was just something I would put on and like for like entertainment, and now it was something I was doing for entertainment, but in a different way, like in like a physical way where I was like creating
yeah.
music, not just listening to it. And I guess before I didn't really appreciate music as much. And then when it became my life, I guess you can say, not in a bad way at all, but it got consumed by music. I was
Hmm.
like, whoa, this is like super cool. And this whole like world of music is just like I had no idea it existed.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's that's usually I feel like what happens
Mm,
with musician with real musicians, it's like yeah, it
mm,
becomes all consuming.
yeah,
I mean that was something I remember we had conversations about that a long time ago. It was like I had a very similar journey to you. Like I grew
yeah,
up playing baseball,
mm,
like that was like the my thing, and then I
yeah,
like fell in love with the drums, and then there was that same moment where you
mm,
switch. Um, I don't think that everybody has to go the route that I think you and I did, but
yeah,
I do think that there is like if you want to learn the instrument to the best of your ability, I kind of feel like you have to go all in at some point in a way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
what do you think? Okay, yeah,
No, I definitely agree. Yeah, I don't really have much to say. I definitely think it becomes a bit more natural or not easier, but it just feels different from when it's something you do and then you transition to it being like your life more than
yeah,
anything else. Like, yes, I was in school and that was like a pretty big focus of mine, but like when I wasn't doing that, it was like, music. Like I could, go and do that. And like that's what
yeah,
I would do in my free time. And instead of like going home and like occasionally like doing music in like the like when I would like practice and like listen to songs like in like the first few months, I would like come home, like maybe do some homework, play video games, watch TV, do music, do whatever. And then over time it slowly became I came home, did what I had to do, and then just went straight to music. And it wasn't even
yeah.
because like, oh, I have to practice. It was just like that's what I want to do.
What you want to
And
do? Yeah,
and it gets easier when you switch and it doesn't you don't even realize it in my opinion half the time when it becomes oh I have to practice into oh I'm practicing like
yeah,
this is just what I'm doing for fun.
yes, yeah.
It comes a bit easier and I find at least but
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think and I think that's the natural course for like someone who I mean when you fall in love with the instrument, that's kind of the natural thing. Is
yeah.
like it just becomes like that's what you want to do, you
Hmm.
know? And then like and that's what happened with me with baseball. It was like I loved baseball, but when I
Yeah,
was like, man, I just want to play the drums.
yeah.
And if you want to play in bands and like you or just like even just the idea of like I want to become better. I want to play more songs. I want to learn harder stuff. The time like baseball was taking,
Hmm.
like it was consuming because I was playing in like travel teams and
Yeah,
competitively, and like so that felt big commitment too.
yeah.
And like it's like you like there was that moment where it was like okay, I get more joy playing the drums. And I
Hmm.
want to, like, if I get rid of that thing, obviously I can't get rid of school,
Yeah.
obviously. I can't get rid of homework, got to do well there. But like the baseball or video games, I was the same way. You
Hmm.
know, if I either shrunk down or got rid of certain things, it just allows you to do this uh more.
Yeah.
And so you're in jazz band.
Hmm.
Let's briefly talk about that. What was that experience like?
That was super fun. I remember the first day I went to join. It was my teacher, Mr. Farron. Well, he wasn't my teacher, but he then became it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was a teacher that worked there, and he ran the jazz rock band at my school. And so I remember like hearing on like the loudspeaker or whatever, like one of the first few days when I had just got there. It's like, oh, jazz rock band, and I like had been playing drums for maybe like a year.
Hmm.
I don't know. Everything's a
Yeah, it
bit
was
fuzzy
like, but
now.
13. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But 13,
Yeah,
that would probably sounds right.
yeah. So I join up and I'm like, okay. I go in and I meet everybody and I didn't know anyone. And it was very like nerve-wracking. I think I went with like my friend at the time, like me and her went together to
Hmm.
join. And I remember I ended up staying and she ended up leaving, but that's where I met my first group of friends who we then formed my previous band. There they were all in there. Um and it was super cool because I was the only drummer there. Whereas like the kind of joke with jazz rock band at the time was, I mean, I guess it still is, I don't really know, but
Yeah, yeah.
was that there was just so many guitar players. There would be like seven or eight, and like there was just so many, and I was like the only drummer that the school had in like a good number
Wow.
of years. Like there was someone playing the drums, and I don't want to like knock him or anything, but even like he admitted like, hey, I'm not a drummer, I'm just playing drums. Like I'm just here because my friend asked me. Like,
That's great.
can I play drums? And I was like, I mean, hey, I can go play the cajon if you want,
Mhm.
and you can stay because I didn't want to like
Yeah.
kick him out or anything. I was just happy to be there. But he was like, no, you could play. I don't want to do this. I was like, okay. So I ended up taking over, and it was very new because very quickly my teacher kept turning to me, and he was like, hey, Dylan, you have to do this. I was like, okay, sure. Like in terms of like what like making sure to keep like the band together tempo wise, since
Mhm.
um I find especially now that I'm playing guitar and singing, everyone relies on the drummer for tempo. I didn't
Yeah.
realize how much that like impacted it at the time when I was playing, and now I do because I'm always looking at my buddy Mike who's playing
Yeah.
drums in the band that I play in. And so I kind of learned like responsibility very quickly in a band setting
Yeah.
in terms of like making sure I'm not speeding up because if I speed up, then everyone speeds up.
Awesome.
And that could be an issue for certain songs, especially. But
Mhm.
it was very cool, like at the beginning, and it was a lot of fun, I have to say, because we went from like typical like high school jazz rock band, where it's like, okay, yeah, this is nice.
Yeah.
And but I have to say, not to like pat myself and the rest of us on the back, but we were actually pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were pretty
I remember those
coherent.
days.
Yeah, I have to say, like for a group of people that didn't know each other at all, we were pretty coherent. Um,
Wow.
it kind of
Yeah.
shocked me. I was like, whoa, like this is pretty cool. Like I'm keeping up with
Credit.
everyone and
Yeah,
we're all together. I was like, whoa, this is super sick.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. And do you feel like that was a big kind of turning point for you, like playing in
mhm,
that band, and then how that, did that lead you? Would you say that that's kind of the seed that led you to where you are now?
definitely. Because through the jazz rock band, I then formed or I guess joined, I don't know, my previous band, Chronic Delta. And then I was with them for a number of years. And then I left with Christian. And then we formed Jam Poetry before we left, but regardless, um, that's directly what led to the creation of Jam Poetry. Um,
Yeah,
so absolutely, like if I'd never joined jazz rock
jazz
band,
band.
then I wouldn't be like playing in the band I'm playing in today. So
Awesome.
I
That's
owe everything in terms of like the band stuff. I owe everything
mhm.
to jazz rock band from my high school
that's
career.
that's so cool. It's so cool to hear you say that because I think there are drummers out there who, have the same background as you and me. Like I started classic rock just like you.
Yeah.
and which is an awesome style of music, but like,
Yeah.
it can be. I think we can. There's like there's a way to get pigeonholed as a young drummer into just the rock thing,
Yeah.
right? And then like and a lot of that's because maybe you just don't have you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah.
if you're not exposed to the other styles of music,
Hmm.
you're never gonna. How would you know? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? What else is out there? And so I think that for those young drummers out there who get into that, maybe they're excited about learning the instrument. They're in middle school,
Hmm.
or maybe freshmen in high school or something, and they're practicing hard, they're taking lessons, but maybe all they're doing is focusing in that kind of rock realm, not even classic rock, let's just the big tent of rock.
Yeah.
um you know uh they may not feel confident to join a jazz rock thing, or jazz
Mhm.
band, or a jazz rock band, or just a jazz band, or even like, becoming a part of the marching band or
Mhm.
orchestra, like, playing the snare or timpani drums or something like that.
Yeah.
Like all of that can be, I think, an amazing experience.
Hmm.
And I think you're a testament to that. It's like you kind of
Thank you.
just kind of fell into that, like, or you took a chance on that with
Hmm.
your friend. She left, you stayed, and then it led, like, now look at what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's like some of the things that, like, one of the things that I think is just so amazing is when young drummers take that, and young musicians, right? Because there
Hmm.
might be a non-drummer listening to this, but um, if you take that chance to
Yeah.
go play that genre you don't know, you end
Hmm.
up meeting other musicians,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, so you met all these. How many members were in Chronic Delta? Five?
Uh, 5, yeah.
Okay, so you met there's like four other people that you didn't know, you know,
Hmm.
and like, because that's the big thing, right? It's like you get excited about learning the instrument. Maybe you're taking lessons, or maybe you're learning on YouTube, and you're doing, maybe you're playing out of a book or whatever, and
Yeah.
that's great. And you're learning and you're listening to songs, but if you don't have other people to play with, it can be tough, right? It's
Mhm.
like, man, I want to jam with people, but I don't know anybody. Well,
Yeah.
joining that school band caused you to learn to meet other people who then now you can play with people, right? It's
Hmm.
like, what, like, how was that? Like, let's get into Chronic Delta. Like,
Yeah.
you like, you had this cool jazz rock band in school, and that's awesome. But now you make some friends with some guys in that band, and you
Hmm.
guys can go out of school now and play music. Like,
Yeah.
what was that like?
That was super cool. I remember the first time we got together, it was after jazz rock practice, and like two of the guys came up to me and they were like, "Hey, do you want to start a band?" And I was like, "Sure." Um, so
Great,
the
so enthusiastic.
Yeah. No, because I was like, I'm trying to be accurate to what I would have said. Because like in my head, like I've always been like a very shy person.
Okay.
Like ever since I was a little kid. So I was just
Uh-huh.
kind of like, yeah,
I
okay,
guess so. Yeah, yeah, I
because
love
I
it. I
wasn't
love
I
it.
wasn't really like I was like sure of like what to do.
Mhm.
Um, but so we ended up going to a room just down the hall that had a bunch of instruments in it. So we were just kind of like sitting around and like just kind of like goofing off. But then as time went on, we started to write some songs and whatnot. And eventually we started to because like we'd play like as a band inside the school because like everyone kind of recognized us from jazz rock since we would always play in like the school cafeteria and the school library and like some of the various holiday shows that they would do and eventually it from like the jazz rock band and then eventually like I think it was like a year and maybe not even we started being allowed to just play as our band at these
Wow.
events. Um,
Cool.
because I guess people thought we were cool. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but um, so we did that for a while, and then eventually we took to playing outside. So we like would busk like in the neighborhood, and then our principal would be walking by and be like, "You can't play in the uniforms," because I went to a private school. and
Okay.
I'd be like, damn, okay.
Wow.
So yeah, it was weird. I don't know. So we ended up moving to like playing in Manhattan in like the train
Okay.
stations, and that was super fun. Very cold,
Awesome.
but very fun.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but eventually we started getting like some shows and whatnot. So like we played at like a local bar to our neighborhood because we all lived in
Hmm.
the same neighborhood. Um, and like our first show, like the place was packed out. I don't to this
Amazing.
day, I don't know why, but we packed the place.
Awesome.
I had like we had friends. We even had like some faculty from the school show up. It was weird, but it was
Amazing.
cool. I was like, all right, like, hey Dean, like
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
here.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was super weird, but it was cool. Like, and it was really cool for a show, and I remember it to this day. And it was
Awesome.
a lot of fun. And then we started getting like a bit better shows. Like we ended up playing in Long Island, like at some local bars, and then like we ended up playing at Stony Brook a few times.
Hmm.
Um, and that was super cool. Um, but yeah, like that's kind of like the first time like I realized like, okay, this is how like a band, like a normal band, not just like the school band, kind of operates. There's more pressure on us because it's not like run by our teacher, who's
Hmm.
been like doing music and had his own bands for a number of years. Like it's
Hmm.
like, okay, now it's on us. Like this is entirely our thing. Like we gotta
Right.
like work on it. We gotta write the songs. We gotta name them. We gotta do everything we can that there
Right.
is for a band. And then that's kind of like what taught me like the responsibility that comes with the band. And at some points the stress because it's just a part of it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was just like, all right, like, okay. And I took to it and I thought it was like super fun, super cool. And then later
Awesome.
on, that's when I ended up getting the second guitarist for the band had left. And that's when we got Christian in there. Because I've always been friends with him since I was like 5.
Okay.
So, because we had always gone to the same school up until college. So
Hmm.
then we got him in the band because he had started guitar like a number of years prior. So yeah, that's kind of like
Awesome.
the main thing with that.
Yeah. And then that led to jam poetry. Yeah. And so Chronic Delta, you guys, so you guys first played in the subway? I don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, we played because we were playing in like there's like a CVS like a few blocks from our school. So we played outside like a
Uh,
CVS and the CVS didn't care.
yeah.
But like
It was just your principal or
yeah, our principal or assistant principal, something like that. Like she was walking by and was like, "Hey, you guys can't be in uniforms." Something about the school. I was like, I don't know. I didn't
right.
know. We were like,
Yeah.
we didn't want the headache, so we
Okay.
just were like, okay, the train's right there. Let's just hop on the
How was
train.
that? Like, how was that experience?
It was weird. Because
Uh-huh.
like we would get on the train with like a bunch of stuff and then just set up in like an area we didn't really know. Because it was like in Manhattan. I think we played in the train station right by Times Square for like the first time.
Okay.
Before they had like all like because now I think it's like mainly just people that are like I don't want to say hired, but like get like the something with like the city.
Oh,
But
you
at the
need like a
time,
permit now, right?
yeah, something like that. And they put up like the pink banner. I don't know. But
Hmm.
like it was before that really started to take in. So it was just like a bunch of random people just setting up here and there.
Cool.
So we like played for like a half hour. And I think I remember it distinctly. We ended up technically losing money and we were happy. We were so happy.
That's
Cause
amazing.
like, cause like I think we got like less than the train fare there. And for like one person. And
Oh my gosh.
we were just so over the moon that like someone even
Someone did
decided to
that.
drop like a nickel
Amazing.
or a quarter or a few pennies or a dollar into our little like bucket.
Yeah.
Um, but it was super cool. We did it in the middle of winter for some reason. So it was
Yeah.
super cold. But we had a lot of fun. And then eventually we got our first real show. But yeah,
You did
we
that.
first started out busking.
That's awesome. You did that for a while, for a little while. Like,
Yeah, we did that for I want to say like a year or
wow,
maybe a year and a half where we would just busk occasionally, like maybe like once a
amazing.
month. We would just go
Awesome.
somewhere like somewhere new. We'd try every time. So like we did a number of different like street corners that were relatively like populated in Queens and
Right.
then moved in and then like some stuff in the city mainly Manhattan and Queens, but because that was all we really knew at the time. We didn't really know
Sure.
the other boroughs or Long Island at all. So
Yeah.
we were just like, let's just stick to where we know.
Right.
And it worked out. It was a lot of fun.
Amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I don't really. I guess the more you talk about it, the more I'm starting to remember that. But I
Mhm.
did not remember that part of the story, and that's a
Yeah.
really cool. It's also amazing experience
Yeah.
because you're playing in front of strangers
Yeah.
instantly, but there's also like it's like it's not a venue, so it's like
Yeah.
there's this unknown thing, and I just think that that builds confidence.
Yeah.
That must have built a lot of confidence for you and for the whole band. But um, yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, it definitely did. Um, Absolutely.
So then you guys start playing gigs in bars and things like that, festivals maybe
Mhm.
even, right? You guys start branching out, you start going around, Long Island and different areas in the five boroughs, I guess. That's amazing. And that was all throughout high school, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you ended up doing a single with them, right? Called
Yeah.
Freshman,
Yeah.
which I love. I love your drumming on that. And if it's still out, I will put the link in the description so
Okay.
everybody listening can check that out because your drums on that is amazing.
Thank you.
Um, but um, then you and Christian end up doing towards the end of your time with Chronic Delta, you guys started to work on a new project, and we've referred to it a bunch of times already on in our conversation here. But Jam
Yeah.
Poetry is the name of the band, and um, you originally it was just the two of you. So
Yeah.
right, so you guys were writing, and I guess you were writing as the drummer,
Mhm.
and Christian was you both were coming up with guitar parts, but he's like the main guitarist,
Yeah.
right?
He was mainly
And
doing.
yeah, and then obviously you were singing, and were you both writing lyrics or
I think it ended up in the final project just ended up being me, but
cool.
he had some lyrics as well, and like some, especially some like lyrical inputs when we were recording.
Right, right. Okay, wow. Okay. So now I think the band you got four people in the band?
It's three. Unfortunately, Christian is no longer in the band, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay. All right.
he has like school stuff and like some personal like a lot of he has a lot on his plate right now. So it's currently
Okay.
just three people right now.
The three people right now.
Mhm.
Do you think he would ever come back or
I'm not sure.
you don't know? You're not
I,
sure.
I
Okay.
never thought to
Is that
ask.
like
So
breaking news, right? I didn't know
sort
this.
of, yeah. Like it happened to like pre-record, so we just thought never
Okay.
like we never thought like including him like no, we didn't really want to like make a big deal out of it
Sure.
since
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
like bad blood at all. It's just like life happens.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's a part of the journey of being in bands, right?
Mhm.
Um, all right, so there's three of you, so it's a trio.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, so much has happened with Jam
yeah,
Poetry from when we were wrapping up our lessons.
yeah.
You guys have so far. So when Christian was in the band, you guys did a single and then a 5 song EP, right?
Correct.
Which is awesome. And all of that, I'll have links to all of that because all those tunes are amazing.
Thank you.
So you guys played a bunch of shows last year, right? I
Yeah,
would say like over the last like 2023, but also some of 2022, right? You guys played some gigs.
yeah. We only played like 10-ish shows in
Okay.
2022, but last year we played a lot.
Yeah, you guys
I
toured
don't.
a little bit.
Yeah, 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 definitely. We had a bunch of like weekender stuff as well, and a bunch of just like shows here and there. But
Mhm.
I don't know the number. Um, to us, it's pretty cool though. I think it might be like
It's
around like 40
it's
shows,
amazing. I mean, come on.
probably.
That's yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
that's
mean,
pretty
like
cool.
it's very cool. So, and I think this is exciting for all the young drummers to hear. It's like you can learn this instrument and then go on to play in bands that tour the East Coast because you
Yeah,
guys have played. You know, obviously you've played throughout the five boroughs. You've played on Long Island, but you guys went to upstate New York. But if I remember correctly, you've also done dates in Philly, right? I think, did you guys go up to Boston or Massachusetts-ish kind of
Yeah,
thing?
we've done Boston a few times, Connecticut. We've
Yeah,
done Connecticut enough that people like we know people there now.
amazing.
Like and are like very well. Um, we've done Philly and also like the surrounding Pennsylvania area
Yeah.
as
Okay.
well. Like we've done that a bunch of times. This is probably a few, we just did Delaware for the first time and got really
Amazing.
sick afterwards. So
Delaware, geez, what's up?
yeah,
Um,
because I remember just a quick story of Delaware. We were recording our record and it's in Jersey, but we
mhm,
ended up on an off day. We went down because it was somewhat close to we ended up driving quite a ways to the border of Delaware to this
mhm,
park, and
mhm.
our drummer Mike, he really wanted to go, and we for some reason we just never went. I think me and Alex at the time we were just kind of like cranky because it was really cold, and we never got to go to Delaware. But
Oh my gosh.
so it was kind of like a big thing. So then when we got the show in Delaware, it was like I remember I was with my dad having lunch and we were supposed to have like a show in Philly that night, but it ended up falling through the day before because someone got sick. And instead of just like booting that band and trying to find another one, we were like everyone involved in the show was like, let's just like postpone the show to January. So that's supposed to happen in like I think next week or the week after.
Okay.
Um, so we were doing nothing that day, and then we got the offer, hey, do you want to come to Delaware and play a show? And we were like,
Oh my
sure.
gosh.
Like I remember texting in my band group chat, like, do you guys want to play in Delaware? I think Jay and Mike, they both woke up and were like, sure. So we ended up just like getting ready there. I was like, hey dad, I'm going to Delaware in like 2 hours. He was like, okay,
Wow.
have fun. And then we ended up going to
Unbelievable.
Delaware and it was like super exciting, even though like no offense to Delaware, but it's Delaware, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But we were like so hype, and then we ended up getting me and Jay ended up getting really sick somehow. And there was a really bad McDonald's we went to because we were really hungry. Like we should have known because we looked like on Google like food in the area. And I think the highest rated thing was like 3.8 stars. And that should have been our first flag, just to, like drive an hour back into like Jersey and we can find like a Wawa or something. And we were just like so hungry. So we stopped at the McDonald's and you'd think like, okay, it's McDonald's consistency, but no, it was everything was wrong. And then we ended up getting sick and had a show like 2 weeks later.
Oh,
And both me and Jay's voices were absolutely demolished.
amazing. Well, it's
It
life
was
on the road,
fantastic.
man.
Yeah,
That's a great. I mean, that's real. Like that's kind of how it goes sometimes. Um, that's so funny.
yeah,
But it's really cool. I mean, you guys have been all, I think like all you need to do now is go to Florida and you could say you've played like almost the whole stretch of the um
we
but
actually are
so
planning that.
really that's
Yeah,
great.
we're
I'm not
planning.
surprised. I'm not surprised because you guys are really really doing a lot. It's awesome. So
Yeah,
um okay, so you recorded the record. So
yeah,
you had a huge 2023 EP comes out, it's doing great, and you guys play a bunch of gigs, you branch out to different states, which is amazing. So I guess some personnel changes a couple of
mhm,
times, right?
yeah,
Because uh um you were always singing and playing guitar. And so you would have a drummer, but sometimes in the early days, right, you were playing drums and singing, right?
yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay, I
Mhm.
don't want to forget that. So like, I mean, drummers listening to this, you like there is so much you can do, right? Like as a
Yeah,
drummer. Like it
absolutely.
doesn't just mean all you do is play drums. Like you can playing drums and sing is legit. It's not just the Phil Collins thing, right? So
Yeah.
um so like uh I just think it's so inspiring. So
Mhm.
so in the early days, it was you and Christian,
Yeah.
and then occasionally you had was it Alex, your buddy Alex from a band, play
Um,
bass?
Yeah, so we would like have people fill in at points. So
Uh-huh.
like for our first show ever as Jam Poetry, we ended up having my cousin Rocco play drums
Right.
for that show. And that was one of the like one of my best memories, let alone shows, period.
Oh, cool.
It's just a super sick show. And getting to
Full
play
circle moment for you as a
yeah,
drummer there. Like, that's
yeah,
cool.
me and my cousin Rocco, like for a number of years, like we had done like some like YouTube stuff, like here and there, we were playing together. But we always wanted to like do something like a show together. And
Yeah.
like just because like we always had talked like, oh, it'd be so cool. Like and then we finally got to do it and it was just like awesome.
Amazing. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so we ended up doing that, but then our buddy Alex from another band, he did he's in a band called Vicious Summer and he plays guitar in that band. But him and the bass player for that band, his name is Connor, they both played bass on our record, the first one, the EP.
Hmm.
Um they did I think 3 songs each. Um
Right, right, right.
so because we recorded our single along with the EP, but we always knew it wasn't gonna be on it. It was just gonna be standalone. But yeah, so they did like half and half there.
Hmm.
But we always like had people fill in because a lot of our connections were out in Long Island and we're from Queens, so it's like very hard. And we both, especially like in high school, were very like shy. Like we kept to ourselves. Like our friends were like because like a bunch of my friends from middle school, we all went to the same high school, so like nothing changed. So
Yeah,
we all
yeah,
ended up. It's like we didn't really like we're like we don't need to meet anyone new. We have each other. We're
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Like so like I didn't like we always were like very like shy in school. So I
Mhm.
didn't really like know anyone. I still don't like in Queens to this day. I really don't know anybody. Even though I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah,
Um but so a lot of our connections were in Long Island. So, and thankfully we have a lot. And so it's like finding people to fill in was relatively easy. Um, but yeah, we had a lot of people fill in. So, but then on days when they couldn't, I had to play drums and sing. And that's when we realized that, or I realized that we're gonna need a full-time drummer because doing
hmm,
that and trying to focus on having a rock solid performance for both vocals and drums for what I was doing was very hard.
yeah,
And where I was like, okay, like I know like I could do it, but both kind of suffered in a way. At least just for specifically what I was doing. Because I like still don't know how to sing. I bet if I did, it would have helped, and I wouldn't be like, I guess, like mentioning this.
hmm,
But I didn't then, even more so than now, know how to sing properly. So it's like the vocals were suffering a lot, and the drums were doing fine because I can at that point, like I was like, okay, I can kind of do what I need to get done on autopilot. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, no, I had to do that a few times, and it was super fun though. Like I definitely had a blast. Like
It's cool to
me and
say
Christian.
that you did it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like we had a blast doing when it was just like the duo shows because it was like almost absurd in a way, just because like you never see that. So like it's like we didn't have a bass player. It was Christian up front. People would give him a mic and he's like, no, no, back there. And
Yeah, yeah,
people would be like, huh? Like what? Okay. And we pulled it off a few times and it was just like crazy because like the audience like you could see is like what is going on
yeah.
like in
Right.
terms of like
Yeah.
when watching us set up and then we'd play and people would be like oh okay like all right they're doing it um but yeah no it was super fun but we did have like a revolving door of people just kind of filling in for a while.
That's a really cool like beginning to the band, I think.
Mhm.
Like, and what I love about that is, you know, again, just thinking about young drummers
Yeah,
listening, like don't be afraid to play gigs.
yeah.
Like even if you don't have a full band, like you can
Mhm.
find people or you just make the best of it.
Yeah,
And I think those early days of it just being a duo really caused you guys to develop a really cool sound.
yeah.
And when the people listening to this go and check out your music, like they're going to hear like how impressive it is to just hear that you even the fact that you did sing and play the drums at the same time, because your drum parts are not simple. You know,
Mhm.
they're intricate, they're involved, they're energetic. It's you're not just playing backbeat stuff, you know.
Mhm.
And so like to then sing a lead vocal on top of that is just wild, you know.
Yeah.
But also like for you drummers out there, it's like or whatever, you young musicians out there, it's like play gigs, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like just go do it and see what happens, you know, and then you meet people, or in your case, you know, you guys, because you and Christian came from the jazz band thing, maybe like you did make connections or just families. It's like you you know, be open to meeting people, right? Is
Yeah.
like the idea. And like and be open to just saying like, hey, so and so, can you come play this gig with us?
Mhm.
And like just see what happens, right? Um so that's amazing. You guys then, and then eventually, was Alex ever like an unofficial member of the band? I vaguely remember that, something
For
about
a
that.
while. For a
Right.
while. We
But
now
he's got his
have,
own band. Yeah.
yeah, he does. We now have a full-time bass player.
Cool.
Um,
Okay.
but for the record, it's Alex. He came with us. It was just me, Mike,
He,
and Alex on the new album.
the new album. So let's talk
Um,
about that. Let's talk about that. I also, by the way, I really appreciate you're super gracious with your time. I know this has been
Thank you.
long.
No,
Um, I hope
it's
it,
okay.
okay, cool. So I'm just trying to cover the full thing here, you know?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Um, so yeah, let's talk about the record. So,
Yeah.
you had an amazing producer,
Yes.
master, the first, the EP, right?
Yeah.
Um, talk
Mhm.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so his name is Gary Sioni. He's worked with a lot of good bands, and bands that I'm a big fan of, like two bands that he's worked on that I'm a huge fan is Hot Mulligan and Free Throw. Um, and those two are super influential to me. So out of nowhere, we were like doing, I think we had just finished our EP, like recording it, and we were getting into like mixing, and then I had some vocal stuff because at the time I was very much a bit more anal about things in terms of like my performances sounding good. Um, because I mean, I still am very self-conscious of what I'm doing because I don't really, especially now since I'm not playing drums on
Hmm.
this stuff. Like I'm self-taught for both guitar and vocals. Like I tried going for lessons for guitar, but it just never worked. I couldn't really grasp it as well as I did drums, and I'm just kind of, and especially I play in open tunings, so there's
Hmm.
not as much. It's still a lot, but there's not as much help out there for open
Hmm.
tuning since it's not as conventional, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, so like especially then I've gotten better now, but like I was a bit more self-conscious, especially back then. Like so we were just doing like some like extra vocal stuff and we were like deep into like what we were doing and like the mixes with that Alex was doing. He was doing bass, some vocals. Christian, I think, had been done because we did like drums in like one day and then like guitars we did in like three. I don't know. It was insane. But out of nowhere, we just get a text on Instagram from Gary from his studio account, but from him.
Hmm.
And we knew of him at the time because our buddies in this other band, Moose Creek Park, like the singer Vinny, he texted me. He was like, "Hey, I'm like we're my band Moose, like we're going there." And I didn't know who Gary was at the time. And he was like, "Oh, he's done this." And I was like, "Huh?" Like,
Hmm.
okay.
Awesome.
Like that's super cool. Like have a lot of fun, enjoy it. I never thought, I'd ever go there or work with him, let alone what we've done to this day. But he ended up like shooting us a message and like we had talked and we were like talking about like just like random stuff. It wasn't even about music for like the first few times. It was just like random things of just
Yeah.
like because he's from New York previously, so we were just like talking about New York in general and whatnot. And eventually we got somehow, I think it might have been me, Like I was really nervous, but I think I just asked like, "Hey, do you want to work together?" or something like that. And
Awesome.
because I was like, I don't know, I might as well give it a shot.
Give it a try. Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah," and
All right.
I was like, "Yes," and like we were especially broke at the time,
Okay.
than we are now, um, and what's it called? We um we booked him for mastering on the record because Alex was gonna mix it. So we were like, okay, Gary Cioni is gonna master our stuff. This is like I was like, all
Amazing.
right, I've peaked. Like this is it. Like this is the coolest thing I'll ever do. Um, and it was
Little
just
did you
like,
know.
yeah, we get the masters back and whatnot. And they sounded like super sick, and we were like, "Whoa, this sounds so much better." Because remember, originally when we were recording this record, like when we first started the EP, it was just going to be me and Christian, and we were just going to
Mhm.
record it in our houses, like in our bathrooms and
Yeah.
whatnot. And it was just going to be like super DIY. And it still was DIY because we ended up recording it at our buddy's house, Alex, in his garage. But
Yep.
he he went to school for like audio engineering and whatnot. So
Mhm.
it was a bit less DIY than like
Right.
super DIY. But it ended up
Yeah.
sounding like way better than we ever thought it would. And yeah, so we start doing that for the EP, and then later on, I forget how it happened, but we ended up started talking about a second EP that we were gonna do, and then an album after that. And then out of nowhere, not really out of nowhere, I think we all just kind of were like, we don't need a second EP. Let's just jump straight to the album. Might as well.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and then we got in talks about recording a record, which we have now recorded. So
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just so awesome. And you recorded it with Gary, right?
yeah, yeah, we
Um,
recorded it at his studio.
right. So I think didn't you stay? You like went out there, right? For to
Yeah.
during the whole time
Yeah, we
or
were
a
there
good
for
portion.
2.5 weeks.
Amazing. Okay. So what, um, well, actually, okay, it's a couple questions.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, uh, just as a drummer, so on the first on the EP and the single,
Mhm.
as a drummer recording, like for the young guys out there or girls, what was that like? What was that process like?
Mhm.
Obviously, you had recorded the single with Chronic Delta as well, but like, what's the process like for you recording drums in a studio?
Yeah, so the first time I ever recorded drums, it was with my previous band. Like we had, I'll just mention this briefly. Like we had tried to record like a record or an album a few times, but it never really worked out. Mainly
Hmm.
because like we were stressed out with what we were doing. But then we recorded the single, and I was like, okay, this is a bit, daunting. But then when me and Christian were like, let's record our EP, because we realized, hey, we have 5 songs. Let's just, put something together. Because originally it was just gonna like be, let's record this EP, because we were super into this band and like just kind of like writing songs at my house, in my room, and like it was just like super fun, and something just felt so different about this band at the time. And we were like, well, we're probably never gonna, be in a band like this again. So let's just record this one EP and just release it. And then, we'll throw in the towel that because that's all we really like first saw was like, let's just do this. That'll be it.
Hmm.
And it'll just be like something that we get to look back on. It's like, that's super cool. We're really proud
Yeah.
of what we did. And that did happen, but it continued on. So when we recorded the EP, it was a bit more relaxing, knowing
Hmm.
that like, or at least assuming that, okay, this is really going to be it. At least it was in my head when recorded, because we recorded the drums for all 6 songs in a day. Like some of the tracks, I think it was the one Moose Creek Smooch, the single. I think I did that entire song in like 7 minutes. And we were like, well, we don't need anything. This is
Well, and
fine.
let's
Like we're
wait, let's
happy
pause
with
there.
this. It's,
Let, let's pause there for a second because for
yeah.
those who haven't heard the song, uh, this song's like 2 minutes long, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 minutes. I mean, like we're talking it's kind of like the ideal experience, right? When you're recording, it's like two, three takes,
Yeah.
probably, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you banging it in and out. That's awesome,
Mhm.
and um, to do all six tracks in one day. Yeah, you
Mhm.
you probably did what, two, three takes, maybe four on per song, would you say, or
Uh,
or
some of them, it came really quickly. Like, I think there might have been like one or two where I did
amazing?
it in
Yeah,
like, and I think I did it in like two takes. But then there were some where it took us like a couple hours.
yeah.
Because for a good number of them, we just went in and we're like, okay. And then I remembered, oh, I have to like think of drum parts. So for a
Yeah.
lot of so for a lot of the recording process, I'm like just coming up with stuff on the fly, and every take I'm like, oh, that was cool. That wasn't. Let me bring this. Let me
That's
carry this
awesome.
thing I was doing over to the next one until we got the takes that we wanted, and then we kind of like cut them together at points and what we had to. But
Right, right.
yeah,
And that's a
it,
common thing, right?
mhm.
Like for people out there that don't know, that's a very
Yeah.
common thing, right?
Yeah, I had to come up with just like a lot of stuff on the fly that actually happened with our album currently. So
Sure. Yeah.
think that
That's good
very much
because
rings true.
yeah, and that's good because you're inspired in the moment, and it's like
Yeah,
I don't know, I definitely think that there's a time and place for like, very structured, beautiful compositions. But then I don't know, I just find too that like so much of the beauty of like music is in that not improvisation, but like that in the moment playing,
yeah,
And there's beauty in improvisation too, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
But like, with what we're talking about here, it's like just that capturing the moment, even on a
yeah.
record, I think is so good. And sometimes you just, like you said, you get that idea, and then it's like, okay, this idea works on this take with that idea on the other take, and what if we combine them into one take,
Mhm.
Um, super cool, man. So, uh, I kind of paused you on Moose Creek Smooch there for a second, so I'm
No
sorry about
worries.
that.
No
Yeah,
worries.
keep going, or we can fast forward if we need to.
Okay. No, yeah, but just like to kind of wrap up what I was talking about for the EP and recording the drums for that, it was just like kind of nerve-wracking because I then remembered, oh, I have to write parts, or like come
Yeah.
up with things. I can't just kind of noodle. I have to kind of be a bit more in tune with the song, and like play to the song, not just play to what fits.
Mhm. Right.
Um, so that was kind of like a big learning experience, and still to this day, you know,
It's
it still
awesome.
kind of happens.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So then, you guys, this past fall of 2023, you guys recorded a full length record,
yeah,
with Gary producing the whole thing,
yeah.
top bottom.
He
So,
produced it, he recorded it, and he's mixing.
and amazing. So, what was that like? What, like doing a full length album?
Okay, so I don't know how to describe this. So basically, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he said that we set the record for least prepared band because we showed up with to do a 10 song record and we showed up with 4 songs. And but
Oh
like
my gosh.
five kinda, because like I had written a song a few days before we went, so I knew it, although it wasn't finished lyrically, but I knew the structure and how to play it. But the rest of the guys, they didn't know because they didn't know it existed. So I was just like, we got five, and Mike was like 4. I was like 5, and then I think we said 6. I don't
Oh
know
my
why, but we were super underprepared, and it was really scary for like the
God.
first few days, especially in weeks because but honestly, I'm kind of happy because a lot of the stuff that we did, like certain songs specifically, wouldn't have happened if we weren't that underprepared. Because there's like a song on the record called 40, very disturbing. And that's probably my favorite track on the record. And that wasn't even like a thought in my head or
Wow.
anyone's head, like in
Yeah.
terms of like this type of song or just like this song in general, like wasn't like no one like had any ideas that kind of contributed to that song. And it just kind of happened within some of the last few days while we were there. But Yeah, no, it was really scary because we were trying to like, go through the songs because typically when bands go there, it's like, okay, you play all your songs first, we demo them, then we get like feedback one at a time. It's like, okay, maybe we can change this or blah 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 blah. Like it was just kind of like just feedback. It was like this is a very strong song, this one needs a lot of work, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
And um that didn't happen. It was we did one song at a time and it was like, okay, we're gonna demo it, then we get the feedback, then we jump into recording it. When usually it doesn't happen until a bit later. And so we had more time to kind of come up with new stuff. So it's like we did like the first song, which is the first one we recorded, it's called Rocks. And we did that one and that one went fine. And then we did Grounded and that took a few days because that one we needed like a lot of work on. So like we had some time, but we ended up kind of being ahead of ourselves. So it's like
great.
he'd be like, all right, guys, new song tomorrow. And we're like, sure. And we had a new song by then because we like pretty much every time at night, like after we were done recordings, we record from like 10 to 6, I think, every day. And if we had to go over, we'd go over, but like we'd do that. And then after that, we'd like take an hour break and then jump into practicing and writing and stuff. And as the days went on, the load got lighter since we started
Yeah.
to get to kind of pump out the songs that we were kind of proud of. And then jumped into them with Gary within the next day or a few days. But it was
It,
really scary for a while, and me and Mike specifically, like we kind of had like panic attacks like every other day, where it's like, oh no, everything's going wrong. And I look back at it, and like we talked about it the other day, it's kind of funny, but like like at the time, it was like super scary because we're at this like super prestigious studio with Gary, and like we understand the stakes we're in, and like the fact that not many people can go to a studio like that and
mhm.
record like a full length, and that we were
Yeah.
there somehow, like out of like so many people, he asked us to come and like found us, because if we'd ever found us we wouldn't have known about the studio. But like, so we understood like where we were and like kind of like what's going on, and like really like we're like, okay, we need to like just soak in what we're doing, like this is super cool, and just be really appreciative of what we're doing. And then it got easier to like record and like create. But yeah, no, it was we were very underprepared, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. But
You shouldn't be.
it was
I
it was fun.
not to cut you off.
No
I
worries.
just want to. You shouldn't be because I think it's a great story, first of all,
Yeah.
and the other thing is like what an experience. Like what a
Hmm.
great experience because it was like a sink or swim moment for you guys
Yeah.
individually as musicians, but also collectively as a band. And you made it happen, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and it's just, it's like, I love it. And also, it's really cool. I think the way Gary ran the sessions clearly, like what you were describing, it's like, okay, we didn't do what you would normally do, and we were going kind of one song at a time. I
Hmm.
definitely think he was doing that to help you guys, like to give you that time that you
Yeah.
described. It was like we did the right thing, the professional thing, and we said, okay, it's 6 p.m. We finished our studio session today. Well, let's go get dinner, let's take a break, and then let's get back to writing, because
Yeah.
we need that song. We need to start the next song in 2, 3 days or whatever. And you guys
Hmm.
did it. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
it's funny. I remember last year, I think our last lesson was in June or something.
Yeah.
And I remember in the beginning of the year, you guys were writing for the record.
Yeah.
So it's but that's a part of being in a band and it's a part of the journey. Like, and you guys also played so many shows last year that
Yeah.
like, you just have so much going on. It's exciting. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so on this record, did you play any drums or
I didn't play, but I helped create, because
create?
like
Yeah.
there were points where like we all kind of help each other out in terms of like the composition of things. So like, or like just certain ideas that like what each other we wouldn't have thought of. So like the on like the song Rocks at the end, there's this kind of like trend picking that I would have never thought of. But Mike, he came up to me, he was like, what if we do this? And I was like,
Cool.
okay. So we
What a
threw it
great
in the song,
collaboration.
and
Yeah.
it worked, and it works really well, and it's super sick. But unlike some of the songs, like maybe I think because like a lot of the songs, there's like outros or like breakdowns of some sort.
That's
Nothing
your
like
thing. That's your thing.
nothing.
When people hear you guys, for you listening out there or watching, uh, that's their thing. Like the single and then the EP, they just have the sickest outros. I
Thank
always
you.
want the outros to be their own song because they're usually extremely heavy. So,
Yeah,
yeah, cool. Okay, keep going.
yeah. It's like a lot of those parts. Although I will say for the outros on this record, they're not in the same style as the EP and the single, where those are a bit more like
Amazing.
I guess I don't want to say metal, but like more in
They were
that realm
heavy. Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's kind of because that was like that was all Christian and like his kind of like because that's it was a big part of his like kind of guitar playing experience. Whereas in this one, he wasn't with us, so when we did the breakdowns, they're a bit different. There's singing in them now or shouting, I guess you can say.
cool, cool.
Um,
You
uh,
sound good, man. You sound
thank
good.
you. Um, but yeah, no, for like some of the breakdowns, like um Mike needed help. So and I didn't want to like jump in for a while because I didn't want to like, just kind of like take the reins on someone else's instrument since it's like,
Yeah,
it's we're all equal here. That's the way we
right.
like to think about it. Or at least I like to think about it. But he was like, okay, no, I would like some help. And I was like, okay. So like we worked on some stuff and we came up with like some parts together. So like some of the outros on some of the
So
songs,
cool.
we
That's
there was like a collaboration between me and him.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Um, so the record's done. When's it coming out? Can you tell us
Uh,
yet?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're aiming for summer, but
Awesome.
like early late spring, early summer, that's like the goal because we still have to get like the mixes back and like do all the mixing stuff and then do the masters and also like we're looking into to like labels to co-release on like vinyl as
Gotcha.
well. So and then like planning tours and all that. Like there's a lot
And
more than I
promo
thought.
and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than I thought that we learned when we were at Soundacres. I'm like, okay, we essentially like we did like half the work in a sense. Where it's like we did the record, now we have to do all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because
Mm-hmm.
I remember Gary was like, do you just want to like put it out and like it's like, okay, here it is, or do you want to like, kind of put the work in like around the record that we put into the record? So like we're really focusing on like track list, making sure it flows really well, and like the cover art, making sure it looks super professional, the name, um, and whatnot of the record, making sure the name is of the record isn't stupid, but the name of the songs they're all really dumb. Um, I have to say, but yeah.
There's a
So
charm. There's a charm to that, though. That's kind of the charm of the band. Is
yeah,
like it's one of the things I loved about what you guys have released so far. Um, I love what you're saying, though. I'm super proud of you and
thank you,
happy about what you're doing, man. Like um, you're really living the musician lifestyle, and to have
thank you.
seen you uh, when you first got interested in music as and drums at 13 ish
Yeah,
to now is just amazing, And
thank you.
I mean, it's a long time, but it's also not a long time if you think about it.
Yeah,
Like considering how much you've learned and grown, and now as a professional musician, um, it's so cool and inspiring. And I think this conversation will be really, really inspiring and helpful for a lot of young musicians out there, and
thank you.
like there's more of the journey to hear from you. Like this is the beginning, So it's
Yeah,
like the record hasn't come out yet, and like I can't wait to hear like all of this stuff that you're talking about, like as you hit the all of those goals and those deadlines, like
Mhm.
I want to hear more of this story because there's a lot of people that are learning the instrument that are getting into bands or they want to get into bands, and like that's all really valuable information, and it's really cool that you had Gary. Like it sounds like he kind of mentored in a way during
Yeah,
that
definitely.
studio time, and maybe even still is to an extent with you guys,
Yeah,
um, which is amazing. So um, I'll definitely buy the vinyl when you get that
thank you.
vinyl. That's I love vinyl. That sounds super cool.
Yeah,
Um, so late spring, summerish, hopefully kind of thing. That's exciting. And obviously you're going to
yeah,
play a bunch of shows this year.
yeah. Yeah, we're
Cool.
trying to branch out to newer areas. So we're trying to like keep it a bit like not play as much here, like in the kind of like the places we played a lot last year. And
Hmm.
we're trying to branch out more. So like and like slowly, but like it's still gonna take a long time
Hmm.
since I still have school that
Yep.
like to slowly turn into more of just touring only. So like we're gonna try and focus on doing like instead of like one-off shows, it'll be more like weekender stuff. Where it's like we
Right.
might have one or two a month, and then we're trying to get a tour for like together for the summer. So we're planning that out, potentially going down south, all the way down to Florida or into the Midwest.
Awesome.
Since we got friends in both directions, just planning a tour there with another band, just kind of doing like a week and a half, 2 week run
So
for
smart.
the middle of the year and the end of the year. And we're also recording a split EP later in the year. Uh,
Wow, that's cool.
yeah, with our buddies in this band called Beat Shop. So
Okay.
that's super cool. And that I'm probably looking forward to that more than anything else. Just because
Really?
like they're
Wow.
they're they're super cool.
Awesome.
And it's we get to record and write as like a we finally are at a point where we have like a permanent core band of like
Yes.
Jay on bass, Mike on drums, and me on guitar, and then me and Jay both sing now. Because when I was writing the album, I wasn't thinking about breathing in mind at points. So like it sounds cool on the record, but live it was kind of hard. Like the first, like because like we had a show like 3 days after we got back. I don't know.
Okay.
It was insane. Like my voice was blown.
Oh
Um,
no.
we were sending Jay like the bounces of the songs to record because he wasn't with us. But we finally have like a core system going, and we
Awesome.
know the songs very well. And finally getting to write and record as like a full band where it's like we got like the three like cornerstones of it all and the permanent members. It's I'm looking forward to that.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
yeah, that's kind of
Awesome.
like what we've got for the year.
It's a huge year. It's a huge year for you. And
Yeah,
it's so cool to, like I said, see to know where you started and to see what you're up to now. It's really amazing. So
yeah,
when the record comes out, or just
yeah.
before, we should have like a part two, man. We should
Okay,
do this again. That would
I'm
be
so
really cool.
down.
Yeah, man. Just talk more about like, because at that point you'll, have a lot of the stuff you're working on now, promotional stuff, and like probably will have played a bunch of gigs,
Yeah,
at least a couple of weekenders. And, I want to hear more about that. And,
mhm.
just like the finished product of the record, to be able to talk
Yeah,
about that will be really, really cool.
yeah,
And I think inspiring for a lot of the young drummers out there and musicians, um, to just hear about it, hear more about this process.
yeah.
Um, and what are you listening to these days?
Ah, okay. So like last year, that band Free Throw that I mentioned before
Hmm.
that worked with Gary, they put out a record called Lessons That We Swear to Keep. And that was
Cool.
probably my favorite release of last year. So I listened to that a lot. But
Okay.
I'm still listening to Blue Matter to this day.
That's
I listen
awesome.
to it
Yeah.
every once in a while. I'll put it on if I'm trying to like really change up what I listen to, since I do listen to a lot of like the Midwest emo kind of area,
Yep.
just kind of naturally. But I also um listen to and I'm like very strongly inspired by like people like Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter as well. Like my
Amazing.
girlfriend showed me them and I was like, yeah, no, this is sick. So
Amazing songwriters. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like I'll listen to like stuff like that and then I'll jump into like Free Throw or Hot Mulligan, or there's another band called Prince Daddy and the Hyena. But then a lot of bands that either I'm friends with or my friends are friends with. So like there's this one band called the Casper Fight Scene that I really like. They're a super cool band. I don't know where they're from, but they're super cool. Um,
Awesome.
So kind of like stuff like that. A lot of like I like a lot of the more DIY stuff or
Hmm.
like the smaller bands that um are kind of coming up in the scene that I'm playing in now. Like there's another band from California called Aren't We Amphibians? They just dropped like a second EP recently that's super sick. So kind of
It's
just like
awesome.
stuff like in that realm as well. A lot of mainly that, if I'm being honest, but
That's awesome. I think
it's
what's really
cool.
cool, but yeah, man, it's really cool. And what's I think important to take from that too is like if you're a drummer out there and you're in a band, pay attention to the bands that are in your lane, like
Yeah.
you can get inspired by them, you can learn you can learn more about the genre, but
Mhm.
also like what you guys did even from the beginning with like Moose Creek Park and Vicious Summer, like you know becoming friends with these other bands. You guys began to playing gigs with them, and like now you've got these other bands that you're going to record an EP with, you're going to do a
Yeah.
tour with, like, and had you not have you not been interested in the genre as a whole,
Yeah.
I don't know that those things would have really taken shape, Like
Mhm.
I think sometimes we
I agree.
can be in bands, right? And we're like so focused on our own sound that and then we don't want to compare ourselves. Like we don't want to be like, oh yeah, we're a part of this. Like I think
Yeah.
that's a mistake. Like it's like,
Mhm.
no, be a part of the community, figure out where you guys fit. It's not to say that you can't make music that sounds bigger or different than that
Yeah.
community, but like embrace it, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. Because like in my previous band, we always focused like on ourselves because we didn't really know much of what
Mhm.
we were doing. And
Yeah,
like I when I got into this band and whatnot, I then realized like it's a lot bigger than just here. It is
yeah,
everywhere.
yep,
And I like to think of jam poetry as like a very small fish in this like very large pond of uh bands that I'm like my band is associated with, or we're kind of like in the same sphere. Because we
yeah,
are on the smaller side, which I'm just happy we're here. Um,
yeah, dude.
it's like super cool. Like my buddies in Moose Creek Park, like they've become like a very big band in the scene across
Hmm.
the into the Midwest and even farther than that. And like it's just super cool like seeing like my some of my friends get bigger and like us get bigger over time and meet new people and like whatnot. Because like a lot of the bands in the scene that we're considered to be a part of have actually come through Soundacres, which is the place where we recorded with Gary.
Yep, yep.
Um, and so like a lot of Soundacres bands are also in this scene and they're from everywhere across the entire country. So it's just like super cool. Like that there's just this really huge scene and we're such like a small fish in it, I guess to
Hmm.
say, that it's
Yeah,
like it's just so cool like looking at the whole thing and it's just like wow. Like we're just super happy that, we're a part of this in any way.
it's awesome.
Um, and it wouldn't have happened if we didn't like reach out to and like become friends with like bands like Moose Creek Park, and like Beat Shop and Vicious Summer and all that. And like none of that would have happened because like if we never became friends with Moose, we probably would have never found out about
Yeah,
Sound Acres. And if we never met the guys in Vicious Summer, we didn't would have never recorded in the first place.
right.
At least the way we would have, because we were gonna do drums with Alex and everything else on our own. So it's like we really if it wasn't for like reaching out to other people that the where we are now wouldn't really have happened because personally I like to think that when it comes to like really pushing like the band like so your band forward in like this scene specifically it's just like I mean I guess any scene really it's just like yes, like you and like what you're doing, where it's like okay, like make sure what you're doing is what you want to do more than anything else, and like what you're
Yeah,
happy with, but also like just going out and meeting people, because like
yep,
that more than anything else has helped us farther than I could ever imagine we would have
yeah,
ever gone. Um, like so many show opportunities came from friends early on that where it's like, oh yeah, sure, we'll play. Like a buddy asked us. And now we're getting to the point, or we've been at the point for a little while now, where it's just like we're just getting offers from people we don't know. And we're like, sure, we'll play. Like, it doesn't
Right.
even matter where, half the time. It's just like, yeah, we'll play. Like, we're just happy you even thought to reach out to us, if anyone else.
That's awesome. That's so awesome, dude.
Yeah,
Um, well, thank you
of
so
course.
much for covering your whole musical journey so far.
Thank
So
you.
it's really cool to see. And I know that this is going to be helpful and inspiring to all the students that I have here in the drum shed. So thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
gotta have you back. We gotta talk more about the record when it comes out and like
Hmm.
maybe specific tracks like once I hear it and like,
Uh-huh.
we could get into like the making of stuff, which I think will be really
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Have a great night. I'll talk to
You
you soon.
too. Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Peace.
I was never enough, never enough.